January. The nice thing about having some scenery done is I don't have to stand out in the cold for some interest. But nonetheless, it's January, and we've gotten back to getting back to work and doing some layout stuff. Normally we take the month of November and December off to do family stuff because frankly it's just very complicated. And we actually have a new crew member that'll be coming on board here pretty soon. And you'll meet Paul here probably next month when we have our Golden Spike ceremony. And if not, just to know that Paul Schmidt will be joining the crew, and we're glad to have Paul come aboard. I've got a lot to show you this month, so we're just going to jump right into it. A little bit of JMRI, a little bit about RFID, a little scenery, and a little operations talk. So let's get started, and let's see what's gone on in the last couple months. Well, here we are in a darker part of my layout. Actually, this is going back into Pueblo. That's going back to that hole there. And this is the back side of on this wall, and the inside of this wall here is Colorado Springs. So as it comes around, it just goes back into here. So usually an operator would probably just walk past the switch that's probably about 3 feet behind you. Make sure that the local goes into there as he gets a green signal from the dispatcher, and then the dispatcher will basically walk that train right in, and they're done. That's pretty much how they would exit the layout. But if some of you have been watching on the YouTube channel, I actually have finished putting in my RFIDs, and I get these. I got this from Seth Newman's, which is Model Train Control Systems. I believe that's what it is. Seth will correct me if I'm wrong, but nonetheless, this is the antenna that they basically come with it. This is an ID 12LA, and the only upgrade I did with mine is I made a bigger antenna. The antenna on mine is a 20LA, so it's about twice as big as this. This is about 1.5 inches wide by 1.5 inches wide, and the one that I've got is about well, it's not really twice. It's probably 2.25 inches by 2.25 inches. So it's a little bigger. And then all I've got, it's actually sitting right underneath the rails here. These rails are isolated. So they just have feeders just feeding this about 3-inch section of rail here. And so the locomotive will come across here. I have a light that it comes with it, and I'm going to show you it just running over the tracks so you can see that it's actually functioning here. So we're going to just run this locomotive forward here. And it's now crossing over. You're going to read 1 and 2. There we go. Go ahead and stop that. And we'll bring it back in reverse so that you can see that it actually doesn't matter. And again, 1, 2. There's the 2 cars. Now, eventually I'll have them on my locomotives too. But at this point in time, all I have them is just on these 2 cars. And I'm experimenting with 2 different types of tags. This is a tag that I got from eBay. It's just a plastic tab. It's actually underneath this car right here. And if you saw it, it's just stuck right up underneath there. Now eventually I'll paint them black so that they disappear more. But to be fair, as I pick this car up and bring it to you, you can't really see it until I tip it. And there it is. So it is not really visible from there. And the other one, the gondola I have has one of these really tiny glass. If I get my face out, I might focus on it a bit. There you go. Let's see if you can catch it. There it is. It's right there. It's really tiny. Just a glass tag. They use these type of tags in animals. And this tag is actually located right smack dab in the center, in the I-beam there, in the channel. So it's not visible at all. So those are the 2 different tags that I'm experimenting with right now. I'm going to get this back on the track when I guess it really doesn't matter. We're not running trains. So, but that's kind of what I've been working with and getting them to work. The reason I went to a bigger antenna is that it had more power, which gave these smaller tags a better chance of being read. And the way that Seth recommends on these smaller ones is you actually would put the RFID right here in the trucks. You put a notch in there and you can glue them in there. Nothing wrong with that idea. I just am experimenting with a little more, and I knew I could get a bigger antenna in there. If you had a pair of tracks side by side, this would be a better antenna. But because I don't, I have just a single track, I could get a bigger antenna, which allowed me to get more power. And I don't have an interfering track sitting next to me where I would actually read a track sitting next to it. So that's kind of why Seth went with this type of style, and there's nothing wrong with it. This worked fine. I actually experimented with this for quite a while, and then I decided I'd go ahead and try a bigger antenna. So that's how the RFID is working, and I'll talk a little bit about it, but basically what will happen is each car will have an RFID, and as it goes over there, the RFID is read, and then it will go into a track and will store that information. It's not quite there yet. That's the next project that we're going to be doing, is actually getting it so that when it goes into track 8 on the Pueblo side there, it would actually store the cars that are in there, so that for the next operation session we already have a train set up and ready to go with those numbers in there, and it would create a switch list automatically. And if you look at the Facebook page, I've actually posted what a switch list looks from this system. Pretty cool. It's all ran by a Raspberry Pi. And it's got a couple Arduinos that actually run the RFID readers and send the data to the Raspberry Pi, and then the Raspberry Pi sends the data to the computer, which in turn generates my switch list and keeps track of everything. So in any case, we're going to take a look at the RFID and what I've been doing with JRMRI. So we'll get back in just a second. Well, here we are back at the dispatcher's desk, and we're getting really close to starting operations. This has been the first work weekend we've been able to have since before Thanksgiving. Normally we take that whole entire month off. We don't do anything. Well, the guys don't come out and do anything. Occasionally John might show up and do something if he's available. I'm always out here, so I'm always working on something out here. It may not be a big project. Matter of fact, I'm going to show you the scene I've been working on for the last month, because, you know, I decided to do something a little different, so I did a little scenery. But these are my two CTC panels, for lack of just to make them simple, control panels. This is actually my dispatcher's panel, and you can see all the lights and all the toggles and everything to control the turnouts. These will be the power switches. John and me are working on actually getting feedback from these switches so that the dispatcher can tell exactly if there's power on or power off. And I oftentimes get a lot of questions, you know, why do you have power controls for your staging yard? Well, if you figure there are, if I left the one track on the inside open so that I could just run a circuit, because oftentimes I have grandkids come out and they want to see trains run, so Grandpa just turns the train on, lets it go around the thing. They're ecstatic about it, and it just runs around the main route. And that's how this CTC panel is set up right now. Is that the main line is all ready to go. I don't have to throw any switches. It just runs, and they can watch that. But if you figure that there are 7 tracks here, and I could fit 2 tracks onto each train, that would be then 14 trains I'd have sitting underneath there. To give you an idea how long these are, this second track is a little over 40 feet long. And the smallest one is this one in here, is about 30 feet long. So I can put a pair of passengers in here and a pair of passengers in the first 2 tracks into here, and then run freight all the way through there. Plenty large enough for me to do that. But when you start up the whole layout, if any of you are familiar with, if you had say on average, let's say 2 locomotives, 2 per train. Because some of them I have steam locomotives with sound, and some of them will be diesels with 3 of them on there, and they may have sound on in 2 of them. So let's say on average 2 locomotives have sound in there. So that would be 28 locomotives So 28 locomotives at roughly, let's say, a quarter amp, and let's make the math easy, half amp. That's not really going to pull a half amp, but that gives you an idea of what you would need. So a half amp at 28 locomotives is 14 amps. Even at a quarter, we're looking at 7.5 amps. That's a lot of power to be pulling in all of a sudden at one time on a booster that's rated for, guess what, 7.5 amps. So, you know, by turning them off, that's one thing. I don't have to worry about the inrush and tripping a circuit. The other reason why I do it is because if you're sitting in Denver, because Denver is over top of the staging yard there. So if you're sitting in Denver and you got 28 locomotives running with sound, come on, it's going to drive you nuts. It drives me nuts. So by turning them off, we can do that. We'll also do the same thing in the locomotive facility. If you store 28 locomotives in there, roughly, okay, let's say you only get 12 in there. Well, 12 locomotives chatting all at the same time makes a lot of noise. And again, you're looking about a 3 amps of power draw onto there. So by doing that type of situation, we simply set a relay up there, we get a feedback on it, and we can shut them down and we know exactly what's going on. We'll be able to eventually track this. There'll be some paperwork to track which trains are which tracks and everything else. And again, as I showed you with the RFID, you'll get switch lists already generated and it's all sitting there and ready to go. So all you have to do is just, as it comes in, the switch list will come up, you'll print it off, you put the train number on there, and you're done. Voila! That's all you have to do. So that's the idea, is to try and make operations a little easier. Now, right now the RFID and JMRI ops are not tied together. It's coming. We're working on it. I know Seth is working with someone else on that. I'm also interested in it because it makes it work pretty well. So that's kind of what's going on. But what I wanted to actually show you, and I'm going to switch to a screen here to show you exactly that my double slip switch is all in and operating. We have only these two crossovers to do. And the main line will be done, and we'll have a golden spike ceremony. So we're that close to getting the main line done. We would have probably had it done this week, except the owner just kind of got lazy in the last 3-4 weeks, and he was on the road, and I didn't order any more servo extensions, and I need a few more. So those are on their way. So next time we come out, we'll have that finished. But that didn't mean that nothing went on. Sean and me began to plan operations a little bit and what we were going to put in the towns. We actually sat down, and I'll show you some of the stuff that I went through with that. So in any case, let's take a look at the panel, and then we'll switch over to, switch over to where the new scenery is, and then we'll go from there. We'll be back in just a second. Okay, so here's my panel, and I was going to try and do the capture, but apparently it doesn't like it when I have 3 screens turned on, which that's fine. So in any case, you can see my panel here. This is Pueblo on this side over here, Cheyenne on this side, and you can see the numbers for the turnouts all located here, and you can see them right down here. Now just to give you an example what the turnout does, we're going to turn out, let's do this Longmont one right here. This is 35, we'll hit it right here. And what you'll see is you'll see this change right here, and you'll see these lights change, and you'll actually see it go to an X as it works it, and then it'll actually flip it. And there you go. So it's really kind of quick because it's set for a little fast one. Now this is my double slip switch, and as you can see, it looks like now it's lined straight to go across. So if I flip this portion, which is 21, there it makes a change, and now it's flipping up to the branch line. And if I flip it back, it's now back to the main line. And if I flip this, it'll actually go from this way down into Rice Yard. And I flip it back, it's back to the main line. And if I do it, flip them both, it's now going from Rice Yard to the branch line. So that's how that works. It's pretty cool. And again, like I said, it's got a little delay when it gets into there. Eventually we'll have codecs buttons and everything else. But these are the 2 crossovers we have yet to finish, and once that's done, this main line will be completely operational. So in any case, let's take a look. Oh, and the other thing that we need to get done before we start operations is we need to get our block occupiers all set up. And John actually has started that process. We're using Watchman. He's got them all programmed, and we'll eventually add lights into the sections, into the block, so that we can actually see where a train is at, and we'll be able to go forward from that. So in any case, that's my CTC panel, and let's take a look at something else on the layout for this month. So this is the portion I've been working on. I finished these last few trees in here, and they're all done. They're colored in there. I got a question from Murph, who basically asked me, you know, how can you get the shadows to disappear? Well, this is how the layout looks with none of my lighting put on. This is just the layout lighting on. I actually turned it off so that all you saw was just the layout lighting. And you notice the shadows are not that bad. So it looks pretty well overall. I'm pretty pleased with it. It's a nice pace. I've got one tree here I have to work on that tends to want to sag to the side, which we'll get that eventually fixed. But overall, I'm very pleased with the whole thing. And if you want to see like how the water turned out, or you know, anything real close, because you can see there's ripples on there, maybe just a bit. You can all see that on Facebook. You can take a look at it from there. But overall, that's what it took a look at, how it turned out. I'm going to back out just a bit so you can see the overall effect of it. And that's the whole thing as a whole. So in any case, let's take a look at what we've been working on for this month on getting some other operations done. Well, here we are. I'm sorry you got my big head in the way here. I'll try and get it out of the way. But this is my first of my buildings. This is Longmont Foods. This actually is the old Butterball factory, our plant that it's actually been torn down now. But in 1950 it was built. It was called Longmont Foods. And they ran, I'm modeling 1959, so it's still in operations. This one right here will be the cannery that is on, I'm trying to think of the name of the street, but it's down the street a ways. They're actually a couple blocks from one another, so we'll have that into there. And then I'm going to turn this just a bit and see if I can't get into here. Yeah, it's really hard to see. So what we'll try and do is we'll move down just a bit so you can see what we're doing down farther. So just a second and we'll make a move. Okay, so here we are looking at Longmont. Give you a little better look at the whole thing. So what I've got here is I've got the transfer yard that was the C&S had. And it originally was a double-ended and heading out to Greeley. I got it stubbed in. I got 3 tracks into there. They had 7. But that's basically just going to be for bringing in the items that come into Longmont and need to be shuffled around. So over here, this will be the, it's just a placeholder, but that'll be the sugar mill. So the track will come down through here and you'll feed into here. It'll have a switch coming back through here and running back over there. And I'll have the street run that's actually in Longmont there running down there. Now, from the street run will probably be about 6 to 7 feet long. From the edge of Longmont Foods to the yard here is a little over 14 feet apart. So you've got quite a bit of distance in here. We'll have some houses in here where you run through the street run, and just an outside grassland out in here. And then, of course, we'll have the sugar mill over here. And that'll be one of our runs coming from Denver. So what you'll have is you'll have the main trains coming through and dragging everything to Denver. And then from Denver we'll have locals coming back out and doing the switching on to the different cities here. So they'll be switching in Longmont, they'll be switching in Loveland, and they'll be switching down in Colorado Springs. So that's kind of what we got. Oh, and it'll be switching in Denver proper. And we'll show you that next, because that's the next area we're going to be returning to. But Sean and me kind of got a basic idea. You can see we've got a plan here. I'm kind of just laying it out just to get a feel of it, how it's going to work. I've got some mock-ups of some buildings so I can see how is it going to look, how is it going to fit together with houses. You can see I have a house located right here, and I'll have a couple other small buildings that I'll be able to move around in the area there and kind of decide whether or not I like it. And then we'll have the sugar mill down towards this end. Now the area for the sugar mill is approximately, we'll call it 6 feet long by about between 2 and 3 feet wide, depending on what part of the track. You see it's narrower here and it's wider over there. But that's going to give plenty of time. I mean, we're talking, almost 18 square feet to do the sugar mill. So that's going to be a fairly decent representation. We're not going to try and do everything. I've actually have the drawings and the maps of what the sugar mill look like. Now, just in case you're wondering how we come across this is a map from 1950 of Longmont, and in here I actually have all the sugar mill is all here. I've got the Ys and everything that's all in there. And oftentimes what I do is I take these 1950 maps and I actually compare them to Google and find buildings that are there that might still be standing, see what they look like. That helps me get a lot of feel for what's going on in the area. And of course I visited the area as well, but I like to be able to do both, and it gives me a good reference to pull the map up, then go to Google Earth, take a look at what's there, and then kind of lay this out in design so that we can't really get it one for one, but we can get the feel of the town that we're trying to represent. So in any case, let's move this camera and take a look at what's going on in Denver. Alright, so here we are in Denver. This is actually what we're calling Denver Industrial. I'm actually taking Commerce City, which is just to the northeast of Denver. Actually, they butt up against one another. And what I have here is I have the mill that's here, or not the mill, the grain elevator that's here. What's in front of you right there would be the Sunoco refinery, and that area is actually going to start from about the end of this red building moving all the way towards you, which is an area of about 6 foot by 4 foot wide, and give or take a little bit in there. And that's going to be my Sunoco refinery there. And that refinery is actually serviced by 2 railroads, the Colorado and Southern in 1950 and the Union Pacific. We're modeling just the Colorado and Southern portion of it. This refinery is probably pretty close to a mile by a mile big. I mean, it's a huge refinery. It's absolutely huge. And so it's we'll have a lot of tanks in there. We'll have about 4 of those distillery or fracking towers in there. So it'll be a large occupation. It's actually going to be pretty darn close to the end of this thing here. We're going to have just all refinery going through there. So the track is going to kind of wander down through here and into that refinery through there. Now back in here at the elevator, we're going to have a couple tracks in here. And in 1959, still most of the grain is moved by box cars. And so we'll have a lot of box cars here, and we'll actually have the grain doors and all stacked out here, ready to be reloaded back onto the cars and ready to be sent back to the smaller elevators or to wherever the railroad sees fit to send them back. And then farther down here, we're going to have a flat sitting up against there. There is a mill there for making flour and things like that, so that'll be sitting over there. This is our icing platform, and again, the only things that get iced in Denver are things traveling to the east. So this icing platform, we can actually pull up about 7 cars alongside it, ice those cars, and keep going. So that just like a real one would, they would actually come through here. And these crossovers at each end of the icing platform is exactly what we have left to finish on the main line. So once that gets done and we start to get the block occupiers on there, we'll be ready to actually do our first operations. So we will have this area done. So this will be this is the branch line coming out of Denver. It's going over to Commerce, and it's actually being switched as a branch line. Now in reality, it's not. It's actually part of the main line heading back to Alliance, Nebraska. But you know, I have to take a little artistic license to make this work because I don't have a 6,000 square foot building. And then on this side over here, this is Rice Yard. This is where all the traffic is actually coming to. It'll be sorted into here, sent back out to go out to either the locals heading back to the towns, or it'll be put on one of the main drags heading to the next major yard to be transferred to there. And then straight back in the back there is of course my locomotive facility, and that is not yet operational, nor is it laid out yet. The plans have all been figured out, but we are not going to get to that anytime soon. We are more interested in getting a little bit of the operations done and start working on operations. So that's what we've been doing this month. I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, anything whatsoever, drop a line to us at the Colorado Front Range Facebook page, or simply drop me a note down below on YouTube, and we'll go from there. Also, just another piece of information. I have volunteered to help the National Model Railroad Association's YouTube channel. So if you got videos that you want to share, how-to videos, layout tours, how to build a model, how to build a car, you know, anything whatsoever. Your division, your local chapter is doing something of a, let's say, a clinic on JMRI or whatever you want to. Hey, videotape that, get it sent off to me, and let's get that added so that we've got a lot of railroad videos. We can go to that site and take a look at that and see what everybody else is doing, because the more people that are sharing, this is just good for model railroading. So at any time, any case, until next month, happy modeling.